Peace, family. Welcome to another episode of Underground Railroad Radio. This is your host, Brother Rich. I have a guest host today with me, the brother Red Pill. What's up, Red?
Peace. What's good?
I'm chilling, man. I'm glad to have by the way, today's guest is Dr. Phil Valentine, the one and only. And we're going to be talking about, I've been getting a lot of calls and emails. People wanting to know, there's been so much talk about September and things that's going to happen in September with the economy, cosmic things, all types of things, the Pope coming to the U.S. So a couple of people asked me to call and speak with Dr. Phil Valentine, and I know the brother had wrote an excellent article on Facebook, but I wanted to hit the brother to touch with the YouTube family and just talk a little bit about it. But before we get into that, I want to allow Dr. Valentine, got a few things coming up, him and his wife. I want to allow Dr. Valentine to briefly, tell the family what's coming up.
Indeed. Appreciate it. We have a very powerful health and wellness webinar coming up that's really conducted by my wife, Dr. Nolani. It's taking place Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But you have to have an invite. To be invited, you can go up to our website at uksnow.org, again, uksnow.org, and put your name or your email address into our mailing list. We will be sending out invitations through the mailing list by way of Constant Contact. And through Constant Contact, you will be given a direct link by which to register or to sign up or enroll. And then once you have enrolled, you will be receiving an access number so that you can get into the actual webinar. Again, Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. It's called One Simple Change. One Simple Change. All right? And if you have more information on that, you can call 800-847-1291. Again, 800-847-1291.
Okay, definitely reach out to him, and you know that's going to be awesome. Dr. Phil and Dr. Nalani. Red, I know you wanted to start things off. You had some great questions you wanted to ask the brother, right?
Yes, indeed. I want to deal with the doctor about what it is that we're witnessing take place with all of the events that have culminated over the past, I would say, 4 weeks, but most importantly, this last week when the United States of America and by proxy the rest of the world was fought the Pope fever and the relationship that has with the blood moon, the tetrad that we are currently preparing for later on tonight. So,
okay. Just to alert the brothers and sisters as to what was going on for September. September being a pivotal month, being that it is at the beginning the scimitar or Shemitah, which essentially is the wrapping up of the year or the seventh year, which was last year, and going into the eighth year, which begins the new 7-year cycle for Yom Kippur and for Rosh Hashanah and all the rest of the so-called Jewish holidays. But it is very pivotal because this is the time when all debt is supposed to be level. Everybody's back to a level playing field. All people who are in bondage over superficial reasons are supposed to be released. Your mind on the higher plane is supposed to release itself from all the burdens that was placed there by the environment, particularly the social environment, and that was for the government to make sure that your mind no longer was attached to things in the past that could very readily cause problems in the future. But I know that our government doesn't think along those lines. Not only that, those who are the so-called oath keepers, the ones who have taken oaths of office, they actually practice the old ritual that the Jews used when they faked being converted to Christianity in Spain under the Inquisition. It is a system or a particular prayer called the Call Nidra, or Call Nidra. The Call Nidra is the abdication of all oaths. So if they took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America, it has nothing to do with them, even though they are occupying the office where that oath is supposed to be relevant. So it doesn't matter whether or not they took the oath. It doesn't matter whether or not a judge took the oath. If he believes in the radical Judaism that has to do with the Kol Nidra, which everybody would say, it's only a prayer saying that there's no more oaths to be bad. No. There's a much deeper meaning to the Kol Nidra, and people really believe that. All those who do believe it don't have any oaths to anybody. You, if you're a goyim, if you're a person that is not part of the circle, then they owe you nothing. Now, part of what is getting ready to happen is there is a new financial system, and we all know that it was coming into play anyway. This tetrad, or the fourth blood moon, which is supposed to be the strongest blood moon tomorrow, is to actually engulf the world with the scarlet energies that come from the lower Kundalini, which means that you have to watch all thoughts that are based in materialism at this time, because anything that you do or say in regards to that materialistic type of energies will come to be. Not that you will get money, but you will not get the cash, you will not get the this and all of that based upon that kind of energy. It is a activation point for your lower chakra. Anybody doing any rituals during this time should be dealing with rituals to raise the red, not the red chakra or the root chakra, not to indulge in it. That's the secret behind it, because anything that happens around this time is the start of an energy that once activated is going to make itself be known, which is why if there were any kind of tectonic plate movements that were leading up to a great earthquake, it is during the red moon or during that time that it will show itself. So anything that has been percolating below the surface, that has been waiting for a jump start or a kind of the striking of the flint to get it activated, this is the time that it's activated. Now, that does not mean that all evil is all based in just the red moon. This is a time for you to actually see that creative energy, see the red chakra as a creative energy, not a destructive one, not just a sexual one, but a creative energy that will feed the higher lotus, the 1,000-petaled lotus. You want to say something? I'm sorry. I heard someone say something.
I was just in agreement with what it is that you were building on.
Oh, okay, yeah. There's going to be rituals that's going to be played. Madonna played her ritual out. She did her thing of the Virgin, which is deep one. She did a ritual concert, or she will be doing a ritual concert calling the Desecration of the Virgin. And essentially the Desecration of the Virgin ritual is essentially about penetrating a hymen and creating that blood flow. So the Virgin itself, we're going into that part of the Desecration of the Virgin, which is the planets now aligning around Virgo, the Virgin, and all that implies, being that the Virgo is being a virgin, meaning that she's new, she's untouched, she is unviolated. Now, the violation is also synonymous with the seeding of tomorrow. In other words, the wedding or the coming together of two energies, and the male and the female energies, and the tearing of the hymen in order to get to the secret inner sanctum, which is where the womb hides the seed of tomorrow. So there's a lot going on with that as far as the Pope coming in here and speaking before the General Assembly was something that never was done. He knows that it's over. The St. Peter's Trust that we have been under for the last 800 years has been now rendered null and void. That means that all things that has been operating under the St. Peter's Trust for the last 800 years, which means all corporations, all things having to do with the Federal Reserve, IRS, FBI, all of them, none of it. All the 501c3s that were created under the St. Peter's Trust, no longer. It's all under the 501c4 now. The 501c3 was so corrupted that it could not be salvaged based upon what the Vatican had done, and through the English monarchy and the European monarchy to the rest of the world. So now we're going under a whole new trust, most likely the Melchizedek Trust. And this blood moon is going to be that beginning, the piercing of that pure time in order for it to bear fruit, to give birth to the new child, that one being the Savior.
Wow. All right. So, with that being said, can we speak about some of the stops or some of the rituals that we witnessed the Pope carry out over the past few days? When I was doing my research, I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead. I thought that was the question, but go right ahead.
Yes, when I was doing my research, it showed me that one of the first stops that he made was in Cuba at a Santeria shrine.
Wow.
Okay. And it was at the Basquilla. It was a shrine that is very popular in Cuba for the Santeria, the Paleros and whatnot. They go there and they do the work. And it's also, to my knowledge, the Black Madonna is also revered at that shrine. That was one of his first stops. One of his other stops when he came into the Americas, North America, was his canonization of a conquistador in California, one of the first ever canonizing of a saint on American soil by a pope. Can you briefly speak on the history of the friars, the Jesuits, and the conquistadors, and what kind of ritualistic implication that means when he canonizes, when an Argentinian Jesuit pope canonizes a Latin, a conquistador who's responsible for the creation, or rather the mutation of the indigenous tribes into what we know now as Latin people, who is, who I see as their standing army, one of the many.
Indeed. He's carrying out part, as remember, he's a figurehead. He has no real power. The power is the gray pope, who gives that power to the black pope, and the ceremonial parts are actually played out by the white pope. So you have this power behind the throne that's motivating and giving clues and signals and communications to those who know exactly what these rituals really mean. And you notice that he went to Cuba, and once he got to Cuba, right after that, over something like 13,000 prisoners were released. Okay? From the jails.
Wow.
Now, after that, he's simply a ceremonial. One of the depictions on the YouTube that one of my students sent to me, saying the guy was so enamored by the Pope and he was so flipped out by the Pope, he actually called the Pope Jesus Christ. So right now, what we're getting is a distraction, because everything that he did, everything that he is doing, is really undoing everything the church has done. And he has to stay within the parameters of normalcy in order to play out what he did. As you said, he was not only the Jesuits has placed him as a Jesuit to be the one in the front, but you got to remember that during his tenure as the cardinal or the archbishop down there in Argentina, over 37 to 45,000 people were disappeared or killed under his watch because of what the Vatican wanted to happen down there around the oil and all the resources that were down there. And since they were changing into a socialist country, that wanted to reject the crown and the United States, which is the battering ram of the Vatican. That's what essentially the United States is. The United States is not a producing country anymore. It's nothing that except just produces weapons for the benefit and for the corporations to carry out their will upon the rest of the planet. The United States really doesn't have any more power other than what it is being used to control. The Pope himself, in canonizing that particular saint as a conquistador, is actually bringing a clarity to, if you look at it opposite. I don't look at anything that the Vatican or the government does as straight out. That's what they want the people who don't see behind the scenes to think. When you canonize somebody that was responsible for millions of deaths, because we're not just talking about what they did at that point or what he did at the point when he came face to face. I'm talking about what he set into motion that brought these people to the level of misery that they're living today. If that canonization does not bring even more effrontery and more ill will towards the Vatican, which essentially the world has already gotten to since now the Vatican is bankrupt and they can play out their Project Blue Beam and all the rest of that nonsense. Unless you know what's going on behind the scenes, you would think the Pope is following along with business as usual, but he's not. Everything that he's doing has a consequence for later on down the line when everything now turns around for us to actually scrutinize what the beast has been doing all along. This, to me, just seems like a crowning of the cake. It's the last effrontery that the Vatican can do, other than the fact that he has admitted that there's nothing but all kinds of pedophilia and homosexuality going on all through the church. The fact that he came out and started saying, yeah, that's what's going down, he's bringing more and more filth and dirt of the Vatican to the surface, and that ain't the end of it. Wait till you see what's getting ready to come up on the Vatican later on down the line.
Now, Dr. Valentine, in the past, a lot of people, I've noticed a lot of people going back to the Bible because they feel as though, with this whole blood moon thing, that the Bible's prophetic. And I've heard, myself, I've criticized the Bible. I've heard you criticize the Bible. Is the Bible, do you look at the Bible at all as being a prophetic book, and sort of we, by criticizing it, we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
I'll tell you what, if I was to write a book and I knew the script before you did, what would that tell you?
Yeah.
If I knew the script, if I knew the script and everything that was supposed to happen beforehand, and I got enough money, in fact, if I kidnapped Money's mother and made her give me everything that she had, and I could do anything I can and want to with the technology I've developed, which is, again, I keep telling people they have technology that's 100 years in advance of anything that you exposed to. Mm-hmm. Now, if I had the ability to create the special effects necessary to validate a book, which essentially I keep telling everybody, you can read the Bible all you want, but the Bible is simply a book at its fundamental basis. It was taken from thousands of other pieces of literature, and it is nothing more than fundamentally a book of universal truth. Now, what is universal truth? It means that anybody can say it. But if I consolidate the universal truths that everyone around the planet has now gotten, and I've snatched it under my particular house and said, listen, put together all of these books under this name, and we're going to promote this book as our book, the only book that God ever wrote. And I'm going to go out into the world, I'm going to kill billions to make sure that their legatee and children adhere to the book and are force-fed the information in that book. Now, I took all that information, and you can go, if you haven't studied, and if all you know is the Bible, then you will not see that there's literature thousands upon thousands of years older than that book that we could see was taken word for word from those literatures. So anybody saying, well, the book is it sings for itself. Well, some of those books that in the Old Testament, some of them were written thousands of years apart from one another. Think about that. So you got the book of Isaiah, you got the book of Ezekiel, you got all these different books going all the way up to the so-called New Testicle or New Testament. And now you have people thinking that everything that was written in that book and put together was written concurrently, because the brilliance of the confounding fathers of Christianity was that they blended the stories from different peoples around the planet, different black peoples and brown peoples from around the planet, and amalgamated it into one book. That's the genius of the Bible. So if they're talking about a validity of the Bible based upon the hero or heroine that they placed, it ain't got nothing to do with that. The Bible is a composite. It's a conglomeration. It is a mismatch. It is a tapestry. It is a hodgepodge of crumbs that came off of the table at the Nicene Council when they were there putting together that banquet of lies to make sure that they had a book to substantiate the lies that they were about to promote to the rest of the world. So yes, you can read the Bible, but if you really believe that there were these people that lived there at that time, and then Hollywood gives you these pink faces to look at so that you can, by association, believe it's real, then you are a fool, or you are a person operating with the attention span of a 3-year-old. And you're into stories, and you need those types of stories to validate your own life instead of exploring as to where the origins of the Bible came from. And the best place to look for the origins of the Bible is not the place where they're teaching you the Bible from. You don't go to the people who gave you a book for the source. You explore around everything that they do. You go outside. You go, as my father said, talk. You want to know more about a man? Talk to his enemy. So what I say to you, as far as the Bible is concerned, is, yes, if you can get the fundamental universal truths of the Bible, love thy neighbor as thyself, don't mess in somebody else's yard, do not covet another man's wife and try to steal her, those are fundamentals. But all the rest of this other stuff, it all was ripped off from the astrotheology of your people. Astrotheology is, I look up at the sky, and I see these blood moons, and because I've lived for tens of thousands of years under a pure civilization that dealt with spirituality, I can tell you the cyclic times that those moons come back, and I can tell you exactly what the world is doing and what humans are doing at that time. So if nothing has changed in the skies, then of course humans are going to be acting the same way under those skies. So then I have the script. I know what to tell you to expect. So I don't fall for any of this other types of stuff. You can do rituals if you want, but our ancestors did rituals in order to uplift themselves, to get to the camaraderie of community, to bring people together, not to try to defend against some kind of demonic enemy. All of that is something that is being placed in your head. And you remember now these people got technologies that can create earthquakes. They got technologies that create tsunamis. They have technologies that can kill people from the skies. They can do anything they want to make you believe God is doing it. So I say to brothers and sisters, as far as this red moon is concerned and the blood moon, use it in a meditative way, as a meditative tool to enhance your own strength, internal powers. Don't look outside for any damn thing. Don't look outside of the moon and think the moon is going to give you anything that you don't already have.
Indeed. Now, when you mentioned the Pope earlier, then you mentioned him being the figurehead. You also mentioned the Black Pope. Some people, often when we deal with these so-called, as you call them, the Parasitic Elite, people are always trying to figure out, well, who's really running the show with the Parasitic Elite? We see Obama, but then we're told Obama's just the CEO of a company. We see the Pope, we're told, well, the Pope is just a figurehead. It's like whenever we see somebody, we're always told there's somebody behind that somebody that we're seeing. Some people feel as though the Jews are ahead of the Parasitic Elite. Some people feel as though the so-called Jews. Some people feel as though the Vatican is the head. Some people feel as though the Queen of England is the head. Who's really giving who all the orders that we see going on, or are they not as united as we think they are?
You ask good questions, brother. Well, what I can tell you is that there are powers behind the throne, so to speak, and you have to know that there are no one power involved. The problem is that we are made to believe that there's only one power to look for or to gain knowledge over. The people that we're dealing with are diverse and dispersed. One of the best ways for you to know about how it works is to deal with the Parasitic Elite as members of the Ptolemaic, so-called Egyptian papal bloodlines. They stem from a group called the Internobula, or the small baby. They always are renewing themselves. So the Internobula, as they try to hide that, means a little baby. That's the baby Jesus. When the baby Jesus becomes the premise for the new. So the Internobula is beyond the Maximus, because the Maximus comes under the Internobula, and from under the Internobula then comes the Illuminati, which are the errand boys, the ones that you see going out there flashing the signs like they, all nonsense. The ones behind the throne are the great Pope, and according to the guy who wrote the Vatican Assassins, he has a very, very good breakdown, although he's a racist pig. He has a very good breakdown of how they, I had to put him in his place, by the way, on a radio show with that nonsense about, him coming in, white people coming in and civilizing the natives here. When I shut him down with that, his nonsense, you didn't hear nothing else about that, because every time he's on a show, he brags about all of what it is that the Christianity brought to this country and the whole 9 yards. But anyway, that being said, his research is very good when it comes to dealing with the Jesuits. And behind the Jesuit Black Pope is the Great Pope. And at this time, I'm not sure whether or not he has changed. He's the head of the Orsini family, along with the Gelts. And this is where you see the Lord of the Rings story come in. These stories that you see that have these trilogies, they're not just, little flashes in the pan. They're actually giving you the opus of the ruling class. So the Great Pope is supposedly called by the name of Pepe Orsini, and he gives orders to the Black Pope, which is named Adolfo, I think it's Adolfo Nicholas is his name. And Adolfo Nicholas is the one running the what's the name of the group that runs the banking system, the Knights Malta, and the Knights Malta reports to him. So what you have essentially is a line of people who believe that they descend from the Egyptian line that was taken over by the Ptolemies, Ptolemy Sota. And Ptolemy Sota is the crown father who created the Christianity that put the face on Christ. And what we're looking at this point are people who say that they dovetail from that and that they're from that bloodline. But there are people who have a greater power than Queen Elizabeth. The Incunabula go all the way back. The Incunabula means the first traces or the first stages of a development of something. And if you want to go back, they're claiming themselves to be the first because they have adopted or taken over the line of rulership that our people had started. And they usurp that, and that would be the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. But the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers at this time serve bloodline families, the Maximus family bloodlines. And the Maximus family bloodlines are essentially the people called the Orsinis, the Farnaces, the Aldebrandinis, the Breakspears, the Somaglias. All of these people claim to be of that. In fact, what is supposed to be told is there was a woman by the name of Camila, I think her name is Camila Palavinici, I think, Palavicini, I think her name is. And this woman, Maria Camila, is far more powerful than Queen Elizabeth II. In fact, Queen Elizabeth takes her orders directly from her if she doesn't get any information directly from the Pope on how to run the business. And supposedly they run their headquarters out of a place on Mount Street in the United Kingdom. But you have to look at things like the movie, The Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, J.R. Tolkien, the Lord of the Ring being that ring that you be kissing on the Pope's hand. Also, if you're dealing with the people who are the Guelphs and the what is the name of those entities again? The Guelphs. Remember when there were the Orcs and all of these names that were given to these entities? There's a place called in the Vatican. There's a place called Borgio Santo Spirito, and this place has missiles that protect it in the Vatican. That's where you get in Star Trek the Borg, B-O-R-G. They're all robotic. Well, that was the depiction of the Jesuit priests who carry out the orders of the Jesuit general, who, by the way, they hide that by making it a female who runs it, as it is like a hive.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Now, Red, you still there?
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Red.
I want to touch on the Kemetic bloodline real quick, Dr. Valentine, because I'm doing research. I'm talking to my brothers in Harlem, about the Kemetic bloodlines, because here it is that you mentioned the Ptolemy bloodline, the ones that crushed, the ancient Kemetic empires. Mm-hmm. And when you go to places like the Metropolitan and other places, the majority of artifacts that are on display are representing that time era, the Greco-Roman period and Ptolemy. So I'm like, what amongst our scholars, our Egyptian Kemetic scholars who brought this information back to us, there's always this humongous gap. There's this erasing of our Kemetic bloodlines during the Ptolemy period and afterwards. Like there's this, it's almost like as huge as the ocean. And I'm asking my brothers, can you identify what blood, because, people are like saying that they are reincarnated pharaohs and stuff and they came back. And I'm like, that sounds great and everything, but give me a bloodline. Like, show me let me see what were you guys doing for like a few thousand years while the Greco-Romans were running wild, while Ptolemy and them were doing what they do. There's almost we're not in the picture. So I want to know, because we can identify that there were bloodlines that rose up out of that era and they're still in power today. And when we look at the Kemetic architecture and how they built the Western world in reverence to Egypt, I'm like, that's Egypt. That's not Kemet. It's two different things. That's something that the Greco-Romans claim. And they're working that power and that magic. So amongst our people or whatever tribes left Kemet and went other places, who can we identify as that Kemetic bloodline? Like, how can we pinpoint the fact that we really still exist? Did we get murdered? Are we still here? Are there tribes and other movements that rose up in other places? Or is it just we're researching stuff and people are claiming the information and by doing such saying that they are these entities or these bloodlines?
What is happening is, when my brother James Smalls, one of my elder brothers, he and I spoke one time. He told me that when the time when ancient Kem was under attack, because it didn't take, an overnight attack of Kem. Kem was attacked, taken over, reclaimed and so forth by the original Nubian peoples many times. The final time was because it was actually destroyed from inside. With Akhenaten, he essentially began bringing all these strangers in, pretty much to get this kind of invite your enemy in, show him how much you know and how well you got your thing together, and maybe he'll then convert. Meanwhile, we'll give the whole new religion that both of us can let's come together, which is the Aten. And in attempting to deal with the theopolitics, he wanted to destroy the old Kemetic way and institute a new way that would bring more people from the regions and from the provinces, much like the people are arguing about bringing so-called Mexicans and everybody in and immigrants and so forth to actually amalgamate and make Kemet stronger by inviting the enemy to see what it's like to be a Kemetic. Well, that didn't work because at that point, that's when Horemheb said, listen, the outer borders are going nuts now that you're inviting everybody. They think that they can rule and take over everything that we got. Supply lines are cut in the whole 9 years. So Horemheb had to go north of around Syria and their provinces there to take everything and chill everything out. He now appointed the second general at that time, Ramesses, to clean out Amana, where Akhenaten was, and he drove Akhenaten out, who became the Moses of the Jews, or the Alawi people from Malawi, which became the Levites. So what happened? We have now the bloodline that Brother Smalls told me. Most of the time that Kemet was under attack, the people were driven out down south and to the west of Africa, which essentially was mostly a game preserve. So if you want to look for the Kemites, who essentially were the bloodline of ancient Kem, and this is again me tracing based upon all the attacks and the immigration, or what we call the war, people who have been driven out by war and by pillage and destruction of their countries, refugees. These Kemetic peoples, the priests and everybody who took their secrets and went south and west of that particular peninsula, as we see the world being turned over upside down and we see Africa upside down today, going into that part, they were chased into the areas that really weren't occupied that heavily by peoples, and they became the strangers. They became the people that were from a whole other part of Africa that had to migrate there to escape the enemies of ancient Kem. The people who were then given up and became captives, some of whom were brought over here and into the islands, need to check their bloodline against all of the blood that they are taking, the DNA they're taking from those ancient Kemetic tombs. And check the people in the West Indies, check the people who are over here, the ancient peoples who were over here before the Asians came over and claimed that they're the indigenous people. You will find, and I feel, this is my own contention, that the Kemetic bloodline is here in America, it's in the islands, and it's all where diasporic people are, because they were the strangers that were given up during the time of the so-called Ma'afa, or what we call the Ma'angamisi. Because Ma'afa just means, it has nothing to do with people. It has to do more with weather and conditions that are horrific. It doesn't have to do with people being attacked. The Bantu word Ma'angamisi is a lot better and a lot stronger and a lot more relative to the condition and to the experience of peoples who were under the slave thumb than Ma'afa, which is Islamic word. It did not have the same kind of meaning or context. So you can actually, what you need to do is to release the documentation. This is what you're not getting from those people doing those DNA tests on our ancestors. What is the results? What are the results that you're finding when you take the DNA of the most ancient peoples that you see that were preserved in the ground and begin to correlate them against the peoples that are over here in the West, which is why maybe the whole system is beginning to change, because the new identifying system is to make sure that your blood, first of all, is of humans and that you came here from this planet. That's the new blood system that's going to be going down. They're going to make sure that your blood is of this planet, number one. And number two, that the only way you can actually occupy a land is based upon the fact that your DNA and RNA matches the flora and fauna as well as the riches of the land. So that's when now Europeans are going to be really shitting bricks, excuse my expression, because the flora and fauna of the land, there can't be no more $5 Indians, so to speak. Your blood, RNA, and your DNA is going to see where you belong and where all the riches. And then what they're going to do is wherever those people are, wherever your blood belongs, the land and the riches that's under the land belong to you.
Sure. Facts.
And that's how it's getting ready to go back. So there's a whole new what we call testing situation that's going on, an indexing situation that's going on to make sure that no $5 Indians are sneaking in to say, well, I'm 199th Indian, so I deserve to get what it is that the people who have been tortured for 600 years, 1,000 years are getting. It ain't going to work like that now.
Beautiful, beautiful. One more question. Would it be far-fetched to even speculate that those Kemetic refugees or migrants went into places like North Africa and then West Africa and then came under the sword of Islam?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, again, it took Kemet at least 2,000 years to be destroyed. It didn't do it overnight. It was an internal corrosion and erosion. And Akhenaten was the pivotal point to its complete destruction. And what happened is by the time Alexander had flown in, it was already weak. And you remember, Alexander thought he was going to take over the mother of ancient Kemet. He tried to attack Ethiopia and got his ass handed to him by the King there. So he said, I ain't even going to touch that. Because he said, where they were lined up and sister was on an elephant, she was not sitting on the elephant. She stood up on the elephant and dared that little sucker to come up here. He turned and went back up into Egypt. The reason why he went to Kemet was because Kemet was too weak at that time. You think he would have been able to really conquer Kemet when Kemet was at its height? Nah, please.
Indeed.
The last thing I just wanted to ask you, Dr. Valentine, like early in the conversation, you mentioned, tapping into our internal powers as far as, meditating and doing rituals, but doing it to, raise our kundalini. I've heard, for years you've talked about it, Bobby talked about it. I even did a show with Brother Panic. Brother Panic was talking about the same concept. And I was talking to Infidisi, and we was talking about how the lack of confidence in our people when it comes to these teachers such as yourself telling us to tap into our internal powers. And Infidisi tell me, Rich, John Henry Clark said that if you put history on a world map, or if you put history on a clock, the world history on a clock, we ruled for 59 minutes. And this last minute that we see that we think we're on the bottom has only been a minute. But in our eyes, we think we've been losing forever. When we see black people and we hear about ourselves, we think we've been on the bottom for so long. So when yourself, Bobby, and all these other teachers say tap into your internal powers, the first thing our people think is, nigga, what internal powers? I ain't got that. Nigga, if we had internal powers, we wouldn't be in the condition we in. But Infidisi reminded me, he said, remember, it's only been 1 minute that we've been down here. So what can you tell our people? Because, they say when you start going into business and everything, they say confidence is everything. You want to be successful in life, confidence in everything. So we got these rituals, and we're trying to figure out why can't our people carry out these rituals, but it's like our people don't have the confidence. So when you don't have the confidence, it don't give it that, like when Bruce Leroy finally figured out he was the master, and he said, I am. We don't have that I am in us. So what can you say to our people just to give us, because we got the information, but it's like we don't have the confidence to believe it will work. And it's all right there, right before us. You've been saying this for years, Dr. Valentine, since I was 20 years old. So what can you say to our people that think we've been at the bottom so long and they just don't have the confidence to carry out what you've been teaching for so long?
Again, the matter of perception is based upon how you plant the roots. Again, the roots are what give you the fruit. And what they do is they colonize our children's imagination very young, and the imagination is the field wherein we plot our destinies. Let me just say that again, family. In our school, we teach that the imagination of the child is where the soul plots its destiny. And in the imagination is where all things are possible and made probable. Now, when you colonize that field of activity, you colonize that field of energy and put Pokemon in and this blonde so-called samurai and start putting in all kind of crap for our children to identify what power looks like. When you begin to take away the color of power and take away the circumstances that color can actually, and I'm talking color by us, that color can actually overcome in a child, then what you're doing is building someone who is dependent upon that image that it's been given to give it a sense of its own power. But you don't identify it as the power of the child. You say that that child must get it vicariously. So therefore, you're not only conditioning the child to become a servant, a consumer, a good church goer, looking for God through whatever the preacher says. You're looking for someone who is looking for an identity that he has been accustomed to getting, that has been nurtured in him by someone else. So when you take over the imagination of a child, that imagination that you give to the child is what that child is going to build on. And most people don't think that that happens because as the child grows, it begins to take on more of the mechanisms of the society around it. So you don't know what the underlying motivations are of that child. So the child adapts. You think the child is now fitting into that particular criteria. All that child is doing is fitting in to what was seeded in his imagination and what he has been told or she has been told that she has the capability or he has the capability to do. You create the feeling of activity so that your power structure is not challenged. So when people are telling you at that basis, well, how do we tap into that? How do we tap into that? As the brother in Pradisi, my brother says, and I even take it even further. If it's 59 minutes, I say it's actually 59 years. It's a 100-year cycle. And in that cycle, the only time that you have been down is 1 minute. Let me just say that again. I will stretch the envelope and say, let's use 100 as the cycle itself, 100 years. Because as I say in my teachings, and you know, there is no beginning or ending to this man. Man is no beginning and man has no ending. Man is simply a rewriting of destiny. Every time man comes and renews itself or reinvents itself, it renews its destiny. It fulfills its destiny so that once it knows, the Most High knows. So there is no beginning or ending to you. There is only a continuum that you participate in. And how that continuum is used, worked, or reflects back on you is based upon what you are programmed with in the beginning through your imagination. And that's why they get our children, they want our children early to learn homosexuality and all the rest of these non-life confirming activities so that you don't have a future. People say, well, why are you all down on homosexuality and all that? I say, because there is no future to it. They want to limit or destroy your future. A heterosexual couple is a future couple or a future-making couple. So I know when someone is trying to limit my future by enhancing those things that represent the limitation of a future. So when you start speaking about what you have inside of you, you need to monitor what it is first. And I teach in my school, you need to delete what it is that's been there, impeding you coming to the conclusion that, yes, that is exactly what I am. I am that power. Not I will get that power or I'm trying to get at that power. No, you'll never do it. If you keep saying that I want to get that, I need to get that, then yes, you're getting the want in between you and the thing. You're getting the need in between you and the thing, and you will never get it. Unless you claim it, that you are it, you are not it. And that's the beauty of being in the isness of being. That's what we call it, the isness of being. There is no was in God. There is no future in God. There is only what is. And what is what you make it. You make your future. You make your past. So if you don't teach your children that, then of course they're going to come back and say, man, we've been down so long, looking up don't even cross our minds. Yeah, well, that's what they want you to believe. And that's exactly what we are doing. We are deprogramming, we are decommissioning, we are debriefing our young brothers and sisters in our university, and they're coming out of there with a whole new attitude.
Powerful, brother, powerful.
And the last question that I have is, when do you think we'll be able to do this creators conference? Because we talked about it a few times, and we touched on it today about the power of the creator or the creative community. Brother Rich is a creative, and he might not even be aware of that. But those of us amongst the collective who are indulging in our art or our imagination, tapping into the most divine aspects of ourselves. One thing that I've always said, that if you want to change the future, you have to actively participate in actually changing it. You can change it via films. The big screen is an altar. You could do rituals via film. You can project yourself into the future. We have not had a conversation collectively about 2020 as a people. We are so, all of these star children and everybody landed from, these lofty comets and whatnot. But I don't hear any conversations about the future. I don't hear any conversations. I hear a conversation about future, but I don't hear a conversation about the future. Nobody's talking about tomorrow. Nobody's preparing for 2020. Nobody's projecting what will we look at it, what will we look like in 2030. We accepted one nigga in the future, and that's Billy D, as, on the Falcon Millennium, but nobody else made it to the future. According to the Euro, the European did not put you in the future, and we collectively agreed that we don't exist to the future, and we're seeing some of the things play out that may even lead to our demise to not make it to the future. So I'm actively, I don't have the support that I need to create these conferences, these great works of art. Because like you said, when it comes to doing stuff that's productive, they're not throwing money our way. People are not coming to fund that. So in my mind, I want to do something that's like a meeting of the masters, but also a conference that's going to bring out the creators amongst us. You know how many people email me and how many people are in the cut waiting? They just want someone to speak to them. We have movie directors. We have video game programmers. We have people who are big in the virtual. We got people that work for Microsoft and Google. They're listening and learning, but they're saying that it's barbaric. At the end of the day, nobody is speaking to the creators. So they like you said, they don't even want to be attacked, because they don't want to get questioned about what do you believe in. They don't want to go back to church. So they tell us this church-like attitude, like I said, people replaced the cross and picked up the ark, but goddamn, the priesthood whose feet they're kissing is the same priesthood from the Pope who ring that they're kissing. They will sit on the lap of a pharaoh the same way that they'll sit on Pope Francis' lap and let him play with their booty. I feel like that at the end of the day, because of the way these people are carrying on, which is, you know what I'm saying? It's so Christian to me.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, man. Yeah, but you know what? Like I said, my brother, the frustration is coming to an end. I can only tell you that what it is that you don't see does not mean that it is not happening. I can tell you that because I'm behind the scenes and I can't speak on it right now. Because I remember I talked about the Bloodlines think tank, and it ain't about people coming out and telling everybody what you're getting ready to do. Always know that, yes. So you know that that's it. And also, yeah, they got Billy D, but remember Mace Windu, he got himself chopped up. And then now the new Star Wars is that all the clones are black. So get ready for that. Get ready for that. All the soldiers who are the clones are actually black. So I guess that was what George Lucas's black wife wanted him to do, to make sure that she did that he put in more black folks in there. And of course, he's the second person. He's the one who needs help to be pulled up by the white girl who is Princess Leia with the power. He ain't got no power. He ain't nothing but a clone. But brother, let me just say this to you. I know everything that you're saying, and again, things that usually suddenly appear because, like an earthquake doesn't happen spontaneously. It happens because a series of events that you don't feel or see happens, and all of a sudden, boom, it appears. Well, there are things going on below the surface because today, like I said, the 501c3 reality is dead. The 501c4 reality, which is that the entire planet operates under a theocratic system, or an astrotheological system. And the astrotheological system that we operated on for the last 800 years was the St. Peter's Trust, which is the 501c3, which is what everything was operating under. I'm talking about your UCC1. Everything was under that. Now that they shifted it so that it becomes a more benevolent system for humanity under, whatever God they're going to use at that time, we're going to use ours, which is Amen, essentially. Whatever God you will be using under, it's not going to be for your own benefit. You're not going to accrue for yourself. So the system right now has to unravel. It's going to be traumatic, trust me. There's going to be a lot of shit that's going to hit the fan in this country and around the world. But that is because those who have been holding on to power for so long ain't going to give up easily. Why is it that Russia was parked right off of Atlanta? I'm talking Putin was on board there. Why is it that China is parked maybe 100 miles off of the coast of California? And why is it that in the Mexican Sea right there they got battleships there in the Gulf of Mexico? That's because they're quadrant off the United States of America so that all the rats that are trying to jump ship, either by airplane or by boat or by land, are going to be gathered up. Trust me, things are happening at this time that look like the New World Order is coming in. That's because they have to show themselves now, just like they've been keeping you on the down low and your activity. When somebody's mind controlling you, they don't want you to know you're being mind controlled. So you are going to go along like everything is fine and so forth because you don't know you're being mind controlled. Well, they don't want you to know that you're being mind controlled. So those who are in power, the IRS and all the rest of these alphabet organizations, are going to pretend based upon your belief that they still have power. So everything is going to look like it's smooth until the shift, the radical shift. That's when we may have that bank holiday or the shutdown, or you may see them play with the moon, the blood moon. They may see them play with the moon itself or even the sun. So be prepared for something that will shift the system that is in place to a whole new system. And it may take tectonic madness. It may take all kinds of soldiers in your backyard, all kind of madness. But whatever it is, whether it be evil, it's got to come to the surface. And I call evil being anything that goes contrary to the upliftment of my people. Anything that you've been doing, any systemic situations you put in place to make sure that my people don't know that they are the gods and goddesses. Anything that you do to suppress that ability for the Creator to express itself in matter, then that is evil. And that's got to come to the surface because the smarter my people get, the more intelligent and self-aware they get, the more despotic those who've been controlling us by sublime means has to become. Because the smarter I get, I'm going to definitely decode how you are mind-fucking me. And once I know that, then you can't keep a slave for very long. So now I got to come to the surface and show you more guns. I got to be more threatening. I got to be more out there to make you believe that you're going to get back in your cage. Well, that ain't going to work no more. The planet can't take that kind of nonsense. We are, like I said in my videos, we're at least 2,000 years behind the universe in our mentality and consciousness. And we're either going to catch up or get caught, period.
Indeed, indeed. I want to thank you once again, Dr. Valentine, for coming on the show. And before we close out, I want to give you the opportunity to once again let the people know how to get more information about your university. One thing that you said stuck with me is the isness of being. That's going to always stick with me today. So tell the people, I know the people need to learn more about that concept, because then they will be able to tap into their imagination and everything you've talked about. How can they get in contact with Dr. Phil Valentine?
Well, they can call 800-847-1291. Again, 800-847-1291. And they can call us for services in naturopathic health and wellness. We are doctors of naturopathic medicine, centering on the hygienic sciences. We do vaccination exemptions. We're the ones who created that package back in the early 1980s for our brothers and sisters, and we've been doing it for over 17 years. We perfected our package, and we've also been dealing with our university as well as relationship consultations, which we call synergy. So if you really want to get in contact with us, especially with my beloved queen, Dr. Nalani, I would suggest that you get in touch with the One Simple Change webinar that's coming up. At One Simple Change webinar, you can go to our website at www.uksnow.org, and there on the home page to the right is a white box. Put your email address in there, and you will receive a link that will register you so that you will be recognized to come in and participate in that webinar. And we do recommend that you do listen to that webinar, because health is going to be a huge, huge thing during this transitional time. You're going to have your health on serious A+. You have to be operating on all cylinders based upon the type of stress, mental and physical, that you're going to be dealing with. And again, our next university semester is now tagged for November 21st. That'll be our fall semester. So if you're interested, again, you can go to our website, or you can call 800-847-1291.
All right. This is Brother Rachel, Underground Railroad. Red Pill, you still there? I think he might have, he said he had to do something. But you there?
Large. Peace.
Mm-hmm. All right. Red, you want? Yeah. Leave them your website, Red. Leave them your website, because we're about to close out, Red Pill.
KingsCounty.BigCartel.com. The old Nonetheless Radio. We're coming back for our new season, I believe, this month. MyPowerPieces.com. Love and Light. I look forward to putting together this creators conference with you, Dr. Valentine. We will be in touch so we can make something happen. We miss you out there on that stage, so we want to do something special with you. And I believe you got Hidden Colors 4 coming out real soon, right?
Say that again?
Hidden Colors 4 is on its way out. The doctor. Yes.
Hidden Colors 4 is on its way out. And please, I'd like to give a shout out and a big up to my son, whose album, Finao, Finao, which is Failure is Not an Option. That's the name of his album, Finao, Finao. Failure is Not an Option. He just has his new album that just got out there. He's doing kind of, serious, sexy, kind of fast, up-tempo music, and then getting down into some sexy music later on. But he's now branching out from being a master choreographer in hip-hop. He is now branched out to becoming a soul singer. Go ahead and look him up, Bam Bam Valentine, and check his album, Finao.
All right. This is Brother Rachel once again, Underground Railroad Radio. We signing out. We'll see you next time. Peace.